Have you ever watched someone get judged before they even open their mouth? Daniel Brooks stepped onto Flight 392 with quiet confidence, holding his boarding pass like it carried his dreams. This trip meant everything, a meeting that could finally earn him the recognition he had worked for his whole life. But the moment he entered the cabin, silence followed him. The kind of silence that didn't come from respect, but from quiet judgment. As Daniel lifted his sleek black laptop bag into the overhead bin, a white man in the next seat, Mr. Collins, let out a dry laugh and muttered, "Didn't know they let everyone into first class these days." The words strung, but Daniel had learned how to swallow anger. He simply smiled and took his seat. Then came Laura Smith, the flight attendant, her tone polite but cold. "Sir, I think you might be in the wrong seat," she said with forced sweetness. Daniel calmly handed her his ticket, seat 1A. Her smile twitched, but she didn't apologize. "Oh well, we just like to make sure people are where they belong," she said before walking away quickly. Mr. Collins smirked like she had done him a favor. Daniel turned toward the window, pretending not to care, but the sting settled deep. He had worked hard for this, long nights, endless effort, and now this seat was supposed to be proof that he had made it. Yet somehow, he still had to prove he belonged here. The engines roared, and the plane began to move down the runway. Laura's voice filled the cabin, announcing safety instructions with fake cheer. Daniel took a deep breath and told himself to stay calm. But when he caught the reflection of Mr. Collins staring at him with disgust, he knew something was building. No one on that flight could have imagined what was coming. Because before they landed, this plane would witness something that would make everyone question what humanity really means. Before you hear what happens next, take a moment to subscribe, not just to this channel, but to the stories that open our eyes and hearts to what's still wrong in our world. The cabin lights dimmed as the plane reached cruising altitude. Daniel Brooks leaned back, trying to shake off the cold looks and whispers that still lingered in his mind. He told himself it was just another day, another test. But deep down, the weight of silence pressed on him heavier than the seatbelt across his chest. Laura Smith, the flight attendant, walked down the aisle with her polished smile. When she reached Daniel, that smile disappeared. "Would you like something to drink?" she asked, her voice sharp, clipped. Daniel replied calmly, "Just water, please." Laura raised an eyebrow. "You mean plain water?" "No wine," her tone dripped with sarcasm. Mr. Collins chuckled beside him, muttering, "Guess some people can't handle class." Daniel turned slowly to face him. "Respect isn't about class," he said quietly, but firmly. The man rolled his eyes, whispering something Daniel couldn't hear and maybe didn't need to. Laura set the water down a bit too hard on Daniel's tray, spilling a few drops. "Careful," Daniel said softly. "Maybe keep your hands steady next time," she replied coldly before walking away. A few passengers shifted in their seats, clearly uncomfortable but too afraid to speak. The hum of the engines filled the heavy silence. Daniel looked out the window, his reflection blurred against the dark clouds. His chest tightened, but not from fear, from exhaustion. Why does dignity still have to be earned? He thought. Moments later, a small jolt shook the plane, turbulence. Laura stumbled slightly as she passed through the aisle. Daniel instinctively reached out and steadied her arm. "You okay?" he asked. She pulled her arm back quickly, avoiding his eyes. "I don't need your help," she snapped. Daniel just nodded. "Didn't think you would," he said quietly. But what neither of them knew was that someone else was watching, Captain Harris, from the cockpit camera feed. He had seen every word, every gesture, and his expression had started to change. The intercom crackled. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We're expecting some turbulence ahead, but also, I have something I need to say." Passengers exchanged curious looks. Daniel lifted his head slowly. The voice of the captain carried a tone no one expected, firm, emotional, and heavy with meaning. Something was coming, something that would shake more than just the plane. Before we uncover what Captain Harris says next, make sure to subscribe. These stories remind us that even in the sky, prejudice can pull us down, but truth always finds a way to rise. The cabin went silent as Captain Harris's voice echoed through the speakers. Every passenger stopped mid-breath, waiting for his next words. Daniel Brooks lifted his head, unsure if he'd heard right. Even Laura Smith froze in the aisle, her serving tray trembling slightly in her hands. "Before we continue this flight," Captain Harris said slowly, "I want to remind everyone on board that respect isn't optional. It's a requirement, especially on my plane." A low murmur spread through the cabin. People glanced at one another, confused but curious. Laura's face turned pale. The captain continued, his tone calm but powerful. "One of my passengers was treated unfairly a few minutes ago. I saw it. I heard it. And as long as I wear this uniform, I won't let that pass." Daniel's chest tightened. Was the captain really talking about him? Laura swallowed hard, her eyes darting toward the cockpit door. Mr. Collins shifted awkwardly in his seat, his smugness fading. "Let me be clear," Captain Harris said. "This man, Mr. Daniel Brooks, bought his seat, earned his place, and deserves the same respect as anyone else here. If anyone on my crew or among my passengers has a problem with that, they're free to leave this plane when we land." The air inside the cabin felt different now, heavy, yet freeing. Daniel didn't know whether to smile or cry. He wasn't used to someone standing up for him like that. For once, someone saw beyond the color of his skin. Laura's voice cracked as she spoke quietly. "Captain, I didn't mean..." But before she could finish, the intercom clicked off. Silence followed. Daniel turned his gaze toward her and said softly, "It's okay, maybe next time just see the person first." Laura's eyes glistened with guilt as she nodded and walked away. Mr. Collins avoided Daniel's eyes completely, pretending to look out the window. For the first time that day, Daniel felt peace, not because the world had changed, but because someone, somewhere, chose to speak when it mattered most. As the engines hummed and clouds passed below, Daniel whispered a silent thank you not to the captain, but to fate itself, for proving that decency still existed. Before we land in the final chapter, take a moment to subscribe. Because every time you do, you stand with stories that show, no matter how high we fly, humanity is what keeps us from falling. The plane floated through the clouds in heavy silence. The tension that had once filled the air now turned into quiet reflection. Passengers who had looked away before now found themselves glancing toward Daniel Brooks, not with judgment, but with guilt, respect, and maybe even shame. Laura Smith moved slowly through the aisle, her voice gentler now. When she stopped beside Daniel, she looked down for a long moment before speaking. "Mr. Brooks," she whispered, her voice trembling, "I owe you an apology. I shouldn't have treated you like that." "I was wrong." Daniel looked up at her, his calm eyes steady. "It takes strength to admit that," he said quietly. "I accept your apology." She nodded, her eyes glassy. "Thank you." She turned to walk away, but Daniel added softly, "Just remember, kindness doesn't cost extra on any flight." Her lip quivered, and she nodded again before disappearing down the aisle. Mr. Collins shifted uncomfortably in his seat, clearing his throat. "Hey, I didn't mean what I said earlier," he muttered. "Guess I was out of line." Daniel gave a faint smile. "Guess we all were, in different ways." A few moments later, the intercom clicked on again. Captain Harris's voice carried warmth this time. "Ladies and gentlemen, we'll begin our descent shortly. Before we land, I'd like to thank you all, especially Mr. Brooks, for reminding us what respect truly means. We fly through many skies, but humanity, that's what really keeps us above the clouds." A quiet wave of applause filled the cabin, hesitant at first, then growing. Daniel looked down, humbled, his heart heavy but hopeful. For once, justice didn't come from anger, it came from truth. As the wheels touched the runway, Daniel closed his eyes and smiled. This flight had started with humiliation, but it was landing with dignity. And maybe, just maybe, someone on board would think twice the next time they judged a man by the color of his skin instead of the content of his heart. Before you take off to your next video, please subscribe. Because every click, every share, and every story told reminds the world stained humanity still has the power to heal.